What good does it do to pay attention to our attachments, to look at our experiences with clinging and aversion? Well, for that matter, what good does it do to meditate, to be with what arises and to gain insight? I humbly suggest that our practice is everywhere, on the cushion, in our experiences, and in our journals. Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. This season on the Death Dhamma podcast, we are drawing from multiple sources as we consider attachment: suttas, personal stories, perhaps even stories from current affairs, interviews with wise teachers, and journaling. This is our first attachment journal episode. What do I mean when I invite you to journal with me? I am asking you to join me in an experiment. You can participate in as much or as little as you like, or you can be a silent observer. Me? I'm all in. While planning for this season of the Death Dhamma podcast, it occurred to me, clinging and aversion are all around us, at least all around me. And as an everyday layperson making my way in this world, I have plenty of opportunities to watch myself push one thing away and wish for another. Well, learning from the Dhamma and from our wise teachers, why not engage in some active self-reflection? I think that I know some of my areas of attachment. Most likely I share them with many of you. I do want to be healthy. I don't want to be sick. I do want to age. Well, kind of, because it means I'm still here. But then I also live in Southern California, where there's so much aimed at helping us hide our aging. So that's something I grapple with all the time. I do want to have a certain level of fitness and ability as I age. As few wrinkles as possible, please. Referring back to that, I live in the land of pretty people. I want to have people I care about. I want them to care back. Okay, pretty standard stuff. And if not handled well, it's going to lead to some suffering. You see, just because I have gone through the deaths of quite a few of my loved ones doesn't mean I am free from all attachments. I get it. I will die, and people I am close to will die. And while I've lost people from my past, as I form new relationships, I have to acknowledge that eventually I'm going to have to say goodbye in these new relationships as well. And again, since I don't live the monastic life, this is part of my life of being human in the world. Now, I'm less resistant to that than I have been in the past. Still, there are times when I experience suffering. And that suffering is a direct result of behaviors, like being upset when I have insomnia, or being afraid of what will happen when a friend is hospitalized. And sometimes it comes because one of my cats insists on throwing up on the bed. I would assume that he, the cat, is suffering as well. What is the point of paying attention? Some might say obsessing. Is this paying attention over where and how I experience it? Is this an obsession or is it a revelation? I hope it's the latter. But then, this is an experiment. And a good scientist works to be objective, to gather the data skillfully, and to review it without bias. Now, I'm not sure how great I'm going to be at objectivity and skillfulness, but it's worth a try. So today, I bring to you my first set of data. And this is me observing me. So there's some interesting filtering going on, to be certain. This set of observations comes from an outing with a friend. We live far apart, my friend and I, so we meet once a month. We typically take public transportation, we meet in a downtown area, and usually we have lunch. So here we go. I'm going to walk you through part of it, and we're going to look at these, clinging and aversion that I've experienced through this outing. I wanted to take a specific train at a certain time. I didn't want to be late for my friend. He's very punctual, which I appreciate, and I didn't want to be rude. So I don't want him to perceive that I'm rude, and I don't want to hurt his feelings. So there's some clinging to wanting to be perceived a certain way, aversion to hurting someone else's feelings. So I wanted to take this certain train at a certain time. Guess what? I missed the train. And I'm laughing at myself because I missed the train because at the station, there were 2 trains, both sitting there, and I didn't know which train was going to leave first. And I had an aversion to asking a stranger for help or information, and so I picked a train and I sat down, and it was the wrong one. I was so annoyed with myself. I felt bad that I might be late. Eventually, the train that I'm sitting on leaves. But guess what? I got up and went out and asked someone who was at the station, who clearly worked there, because I didn't want to go through missing another train or being on a wrong train. So I got over my aversion because my desire to not miss the train became strong enough that I went ahead and asked. So I did not miss the second train. While my train is heading towards our downtown meeting place, my friend texts me. He's running late too. There's a little part of me that feels slightly relieved. Oh, good. It's not just me. So we arrive at the same time. We had a specific restaurant we wanted to go to. So this outing was, of course, because we like to get together and see each other. And also, last time we met in this area, we walked past this restaurant, and at the same time, we both were very attracted or very attached to the idea of the kind of food that this restaurant was serving. I even remember looking, and we both said, wow, how come we never noticed that before? That looks really good. Ooh, I really want to eat that. But we also noticed everybody wanted to eat that, and there was a long line. So we thought that on this particular outing, this recent outing, that we had selected a good time, a time when there would not be a line. Guess what? There was a line. And so we both were disappointed about that, but, we both kept good spirits about it. We put our names on the list. It was one of those electronic things where you sign up electronically and then it's supposed to text you when your table is ready. We wait, we walk away, we sit down, we visit, and at about the same time, we both look up and say, gosh, it seems like it should be time now. And I think that's because we both were starting to have some suffering from empty bellies, right? So an aversion to experience hunger led us to say, hey, I think it's time. We return to the restaurant. We don't see our names on the waiting list anymore. And so we figure, that must mean they're ready for us. It doesn't mean they're ready for us. It means our names were no longer on the list. We don't know why. We asked the person working to take a look. And what he said was, your name's not on the list. I don't see you. There's no, he didn't say proof. See, do you see where I'm going now? Because I'm using the word proof. And he said, so I'm going to need you to put your name back on the list. We look at each other, we kind of shrug it off, and we decide we're not going to put our name back on the list because our attachment to eat there, to wanting to eat there and have that amazing looking food, was overcome by our aversion to continuing to experience hunger. So we shrug it off and we go elsewhere. We go to another restaurant. We sit down. They can let us in right away. It's the middle of the afternoon. It isn't really lunchtime. It's just this one place happens to be very busy. So we shrug it off. We go elsewhere. Interestingly, though, while we're sitting there after we order, we begin to talk about what happened. And I even say to my friend, I saw you enter your name. I saw you press enter. I saw it come back and give you the message that it would be about 25 minutes. I saw your name. And so we have some discussion about, did somebody remove us? He had a theory that they removed us because restaurants don't like to seat tables of two. I don't know why. I think my theory was more around the fact that sometimes technology works right and sometimes it doesn't. But at any rate, we had some attachments over how we felt like the restaurant should have handled it. See, we both felt like the restaurant should have believed us and trusted us and put us at the front of the line and given us the next table, not tell us, get back on the list and wait all over again. So we had some strong feelings, some attachments over how we wanted it to have been handled. I don't know how often somebody goes and says they're on the list when they're not on the list. Maybe the person working has had experiences with people trying to jump the line, or, has an aversion to people trying to jump the line, or, has had bad experiences. I don't know. But we definitely had some attachments. Beyond that, though, I think that we both, maintained our cool. Neither one of us, yelled or got mad or were overly upset. We were definitely both disappointed, though. And so that is a situation of watching, myself go through this, getting ready to go on this outing and going and missing my train and then being glad that my friend was going to be late too. And the whole thing, that's just an example of something that I looked at and wrote about in my attachment journal. So now I've shared this recent scenario and the clinging and aversion that I experienced. And I noticed I said I wrote it. I am old-fashioned and I write things down when I'm really journaling, or like if I'm in a class taking notes. I am old school and I handwrite them, even though I might actually have the world's worst handwriting. I'm almost proud of that because when I was young, I had an aversion to being made fun of because my handwriting was very poor. And instead of working on it to make it better, I decided to go all in and be proud of how bad it is. So despite the fact that it is very bad, and I have an aversion to trying to read my own handwriting, when I journal, I write things down. And I do that because I do understand that when we handwrite, it stimulates a different part of our brain, and we think and we process differently. And so I encourage you, if you decide to journal, to also get a blank journal, blank pieces of paper, and write these things down. And this is why I'm able to recall to you kind of step by step the story of what happened, because when I came home, I wrote things down about the experience and what happened and, what I thought about this and how I felt about that. So I encourage you to try to do the same. What is a recent experience that's similar for you? Do you think that my friend and I, behaved fairly well because we were together? That's a question I have in my journal. And I don't know. I want to think that I would have been, well behaved no matter what. I've never seen my friend lose his temper. I've seen him be upset about things, but I've never seen him lose his temper over something. And so, but, there is that possibility that we each in our clinging and aversion tempered our clinging and our aversion because we were together and we were in public and we had an aversion to being thought of as poor-mannered or, having an explosive temper or something like that. So think about that. Does your attachment behavior change based on who is watching? And what is your threshold for this type of disappointment? So for example, maybe for both of us, even though we wanted to eat at this restaurant, we were still fulfilling the goal, if you will, which was to be there together and have our monthly catch up. And we were able to go ahead and eat. So it's not like we weren't able to meet at all and we weren't able to eat at all. In theory, either one of us, if we really were in love with the idea of that restaurant, could have gone at any point without the other person, right? So what is your threshold for this type of disappointment? And this is a thing I think is kind of a big thing for us to consider as we do this kind of attachment journaling, because our threshold, first of all, it can be different on any given day depending on our state, right? But I do think that we might have themes. And that's another reason for keeping an attachment journal, is it will teach us themes. I suspect, and I'm going to learn this as I move forward into the year, that my themes are not necessarily about whether or not I can go to a certain restaurant, but I suspect that I have some themes about how I perceive people treat me. And I think I know this from experience, but I'm going to follow through and do my journaling and try to be a good data scientist and collect the information objectively. Consider spending time and walking yourself through a recent scenario of your own. You don't have to share it with anyone, but you might. And consider writing it down, old school like I do. And then go to the cushion and see what arises for you in meditation, right? Because we practice on and off the mat. And it's the combination of the Dhamma and the meditation and the everyday world. These are what really put our practice to the test and strengthen our practice and build us and help us on our release, our journey toward the release of suffering. So this is the beginning of the attachment journal. Every day can be an opportunity for the attachment journal. There's so much to learn. I probably won't keep the attachment journal every day, but I will certainly keep my eyes open and come up with opportunities. And right now, I'm going to try to journal for myself at least once a week. Not every one of those will be a podcast episode, but I'm going to try to share with you coming back to the journal at least once a month. So welcome to journaling attachments and taking stock of clinging and aversion. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.